Hey there folks, before the episode starts, just wanted to say we're doing a giveaway with Pierce The Heaves, the Lancer module we'll be talking about in this episode. To enter, just drop a comment below about anything related to this episode or just any other tabletop RPG game you're playing in or that you're running or anything like that, and we'll just pick a random comment from below. We do have multiple codes, so we'll be running this giveaway across a few different weeks. So we'll be doing one this week, one next week, and one the week after that. Just drop a comment below, and yeah. Let's get into the episode. Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team, and this week, a special guest. I'm Calvin, and I'm joined here by Ramon.
Hey guys, if this is the first time listening to the Win with Dice podcast, like Calvin said, it's a podcast featuring the Win with Dice team, and also a podcast about playing, tabletop RPGs. Calvin and I like to take a casual approach to GMing, and, we just talk about our games and what we learn from them, and the show.
And sometimes we also have someone on. It's been a while, but we have another Lancer creator on the show. Very excited to introduce Valk, or Valkyrion.
Hi, nice to meet y'all. I'm Valk, first time adventure writer, but long time GM of a bunch of different systems and also a video game player.
Nice. Yeah, so Valkyrion has recently released Pierce The Heaves, a Lancer module, as well as some other awesome stuff on itch.io that you all should definitely check out with the links below. We're going to get into talking about all of that, but before we do that, we have to get to the most important part of the show, the Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week.
It's the Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week, brought to you by Valk. Thanks, Valk.
Yeah, absolutely. My GM tip, that'll probably be clear as we get more into the podcast, is for people who are writing for Lancer, my advice is to look outside of the Lancer area for not only GM advice, but also adventure writing advice. Lancer is a relatively young game, but the hobby is old. There's lots of great blogs and resources out there that can just help guide you with your GMing, help guide you with your adventure writing. And so much of the information is cross. It can be applied to so many. It's cross-disciplinary. It can be applied to so many different RPGs. So I definitely recommend, if you've mostly just been sitting in the Lancer sphere, check out some other spheres as well. Look at Blades in the Dark. Look at for like narrative stuff. Look at D&D for a lot of the standard dungeon building, adventure building. Yeah, that's my recommendation. There's so much out there. Become well read, and you'll go so far.
Definitely. We're always trying to on the show push people to look at other RPGs and other systems to kind of take whatever they want and bring it to the system that they're comfortable playing in and kind of use that as well. So yeah, even looking at adventure design and tips from other systems could definitely help you out for sure. So yeah, there you go, folks. There's your tip of the week. Thanks, Valk.
Absolutely.
Groovy. All right. Well, let's slide right into. Well, actually, let's introduce Valkyrion properly so people know who you are and what you're about before we get into talking about Pierce The Heaves, which I'm very interested in, and I think I might want to try running it because it's a nice short adventure that I think I could figure out because I'm very much a novice Lancer GM. But I really liked this adventure. But let's quickly talk about you, because you've also worked on something I think many Lancer creators would be very familiar with, the RPG template itself.
Oh yeah. I am, by day I'm a software dev. I've worked a lot in my off time helping the Lancer web application CompCon help fix bugs, add a few features, hopefully make it a little bit of a smoother run for people. That's honestly how I really got deep into Lancer, was how CompCon was open source, and I just kind of got into it and started coding around. But since then, I've been working on other things. Like I wanted to see a kind of a standard template that I could use and maybe other people would use. So I made that a Lancer RPG template for Microsoft Word and Google Docs that I actually put to use for writing Pierce The Heaves. That was like my first foray into into publishing something. followed it up with mechanized chassis advanced paradigms. I'm really questioning whether I should have put that many words in the title, but here we are. It's a bunch of...
It's a very futuristic sounding name.
It is very futuristic. But it's also a lot of word salad sometimes. But bottom line, it's an NPC guide for pre-built Lancer NPCs. It's got like, for all 30 of the mech NPCs in Lancer, it's got 2 builds that pull from 2 optional systems of each NPC, and then tries to put them into a tactics and give them tactics and recommended sit reps, just to try to make it easier for GMs to, hey, I want something a little bit more advanced than the standard NPC. I'm just going to plot this in. And
that's
then,
really cool. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's I think it's useful. I hope that other people can find it useful too. And then eventually I signed up for this. I want to do this writer workshop. It's called the RPG Writer Workshop. It's offered through Storytelling Collective. And I wanted to see, hey, can I write a Lancer adventure out of this? And Pierce the Heavens was a result of that.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Yeah, I realized that I started going through kind of my catalog here instead of a proper introduction. So apologies.
No, it's cool. I would like to dive a little bit deeper on one of the topics, because like I think that like the one of the overwhelming things in Lancer is the sheer amount of NPC options, because in other games it's like, oh hey, fight this goblin first level, but then realistically Lancer's like, hey, you have all these options, just figure out what you want to use, right? And then sometimes you feel like I'm misusing this, or sometimes like, oh, my player's like, this was too hard, this is too easy. I think having a little bit of like context onto like what situation calls for what NPC to kind of bring that challenge, but also not totally destroy your players, is like perfect, and that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I when I originally came into like the Lancer, the main Lancer Discord PilotNet, one of the things I asked for was like, is there like a documentation for recommended NPC builds? And there wasn't one at the time. So that honestly kind of drove me to want to make more of those things, because for me, having a pre-built stat block can be very, very helpful, especially if it comes with some extra information that helps me figure out, where can I ground this in a certain piece of the world. That's some of the things that like that gets derided in other systems like D&D. You've got stat blocks for everything. Some of them are even duplicates of other things, and all that. But on the other hand, they do come with theme and ideas. You could take an NPC stat block in D&D and potentially build an adventure around it, like owlbear. Well, that's evocative. Let's make an adventure around an owlbear. Lancer was, but on the other hand, that means that like, well, now you got to keep buying stat blocks to keep getting unique stuff, if you know what I mean. Whereas Lancer is like, everything's here. It's all generic. You can drop it anywhere you like. On one hand, that's very flexible. It's very nice. But on the other hand, it then often doesn't have that hook, that mental hook for the GM to want to say, oh yeah, I'm going to build an adventure around fighting this bombard, like this artillery piece. Like you could do that, but it's the NPCs aren't really designed for that. They're meant to be plug and play.
Yeah. It's to me, it's like you have the idea of what you want to do, find out what the stat block kind of aligns with it, versus like you're flipping through the book and you're like, oh, this inspires me to make up this. The stat block inspires me to make up this thing, right? So So I that's like, I think because like tactical combat's where my creative juice comes from. So definitely when I saw the list of all the NPC possibilities of Lancer, I just drooled, right? So I was like, then it's like actual implementation was like, I don't know if I made the right choices, but let's see.
Yeah. I definitely went through that when I was setting up my game. That was streamed like a whole while back. I was just having at some points I was having trouble figuring out like what was the best NPC to put in this space, and a lot of it was just like, this thing looks kind of cool and hopefully works for what I'm doing. That's why it's good, I think, that like there's tools to help GMs out with that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm happy to provide what I can make. I know others have started making some similar things, some similar tools. Yeah, I know one other person on PilotNet put together a one for some of the wallflower NPCs. Yeah, I don't think it's been published yet, but they did put it together, inspired by what I had done with the base NPCs, and they came to me for some advice, and I did my best to help them out and get that going. But yeah, it's exciting to see some of that happen. I think that's something I'd like to do more in the future. Like I've started writing down ideas, like, oh, maybe now that I've done all the basic NPCs and within the NPCs, maybe I think I'm going to branch out into templates and see what I can do with templates. I've got I've got a list. I'm kind of adding to it and like just trying to figure out, all right, how do I make this? One of the things I want to do more is like, all right, I want to make these more grounded in a theme or in lore. Like I think I'm like the approach I'm taking is like a more of like a factional variant. So like, okay, well I've got these 4 mechs. They're all Horus aligned. I'm going to see if what kind of naming convention I can get, what kind of feel I can get out of them, and make them feel like, okay, yeah, no, these things, if you went up against a Horus cell for whatever reason, you might see these wild and wacky things that are just kind of like a little bit out there with their theme, and a little bit more of a feel like they're kit bashed or hacked together.
Yeah. Versus like some other like corporo thing where it's like, SSC would be all about the speed and the sleekness and how, better they are than you. Right?
Yeah. And I think one of the I'm still trying to like brainstorm the themes. Like right now, the one I have for IPSN is very much like, all right, well, they're going to be doing like transport stuff, or maybe like dealing with ships, trying to either like reclaiming their goods, or like using like the ship template or the vehicle template to like carry things around. Because they made sense to me, but I don't know. That one's still a far ways out. I'm not really actively working on that one. It's more of like it's marinating. So, but I do want to someday get that out. That is a goal of mine.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. Okay, well let's talk about the thing that is released on itch.io. Pierce the Heavens, a Lancer module adventure that I think could also work as a great introduction to a campaign, because the ending is like, the endings are still a bit open-ended, but I think we should actually talk about what comes before the endings, like the whole adventure.
Sure, absolutely.
So yeah, do you want to just introduce Pierce the Heavens for people who might not have heard of it?
Yeah, so Pierce the Heavens, it's a third-party module for Lancer RPG. This is heavily inspired by the pilot episode of Gurren Lagann, one of my a favorite anime of mine. It's intended for a party of 3 to 5 LL license level 0 characters. Takes about 8 to 12 hours, centering the player characters as orchestrators of a miner's revolt in this underground mining community, trying to liberate these miners from the clutches of a despot and her cronies. It's a lot like a mech scale Prison Break. Player characters they start off with nothing, basically, except like one piece of pilot gear. They don't have armor, they don't have weapons, they only got one piece of gear that they can select at the start. They can still like pre-build their mechs, and I honestly recommend that, because then once the mechs come into play, it's like, okay, cool, you got your mech, and it's all built together. But in terms of pilot stuff, they don't have anything but their skills and one piece of gear and the clothes on their backs. And the goal is to it pulls a lot from like some D&D modules where you got these different nodes, these different locations to explore. Go through those locations, get the gear that you need, acquire also reserves, ultimately with the goal of constructing or obtaining your own mechs to stage a workers' revolt. So, whole first part of the adventure, it'll probably take like a 4-hour session to complete, is simply going around in pilot narrative play and exploring the locations. And what I try to do is I detail locations with some. I try to have some evocative descriptions to give an example of what this place feels like, what's some major features of the area, get more into detail of features in the area, and what can be interacted with for GMs to throw out there. Try to give the GMs themselves anchoring points to use and offer suggestions. So like one of the things is in the commons there's a propaganda tower, and it's just blaring out propaganda for this despot who fancies herself a big old fancy knight, and it's like, oh yeah, she did all. It's like giving the play-by-play of her recent battle or on that sort of thing, and it's like, oh yeah, you should all be so grateful you have a defender like this, and everybody was like, this is just beating me down. We don't like this person, but here she is blaring out propaganda over this PA system. That broadcast tower, you can go. The whole point of that is that I drop it in there so you can interact with it. You can go, you can and that honestly, that how it's interacted with depends a lot upon the GMs, the players themselves. Players might decide, oh, I want to blow it up, or oh, I want to hack it and get it to broadcast a different message. Those I don't really explicitly lay those out, but with how Lancer's narrative system is very open-ended, those are things that a player could come up with on their own. They might even come up with something completely different for all I know. And if they don't, that's fine, because there's other stuff out there that they can interact with and work with. One of the playtest group I ran, they recruited workers and commoners from the commons, like the big residential area, to help them out in other locations. So the other locations are the dig site, which has a bunch of digging machines. It has a stockade where a popular revolutionary is currently imprisoned. It's got a small supply shed. And then there's also the supply depot, which is where all the goods are. They're all kind of languishing there and leaving the people malnourished. But yeah, but it also has, that is where a Schedule 2 printer is, and that is, lore-wise, that is where you can create a mech.
Yeah.
But the thing is that you need people to run it. So one of the things is that, okay, well, we have recruited some people to our cause who can help us run the printer while other people are doing other things. So that's kind of how I wanted to make these locations. Things you do in one place can help you do things in another place. It's compounded. And I just wanted to encourage moving around, exploring the areas, getting new tools in different places, all for the goal of eventually getting your mechs, whether you print them or hijack them from some enforcer patrols, what have you. Yeah. Nice. Have I gone into enough detail there? Is there anything in particular that you'd like?
No, I mean, you did cover the thing that I really found interesting about that part of the adventure, is just that after you get the initial information, the initial mission, the players are just kind of let out into this space, and they have any of the these 3 locations they can go to, and from there they can start to figure out, well, what can we do here to help us further our mission? Like you had mentioned the printer itself, but you do need people there to operate it, and it is going to attract attention. So it's how do we start working with that? Do we need to deal with anybody who might have their attention drawn to it first? Do we need to recruit people to help first? I just really like that sort of open-ended, here's what you have to do, here are the things you can do in this space, but I'm not going to tell you how you need to get to the end of the road here.
Yeah, precisely.
It feels very interconnected, to where there's multiple solutions to the problem of get the mechs, right? Which is I think that's really cool, because it does also feel kind of old schooly in a way, where it's like there's no like, it's like these are just things that are happening. You could figure out how to deal with it, kind of deal, right? Like,
Yeah.
whoever party's trying to deal with this at the table, like every table's gonna do it differently, and nothing's gonna actually end up being the same. So, I think it's great. I mean, it gets me excited as a GM to run it,
Great.
see what happens.
Yeah, that was the major objective was, because a lot of Lancer games I've played have focused a lot on the combat, and the combat of Lancer obviously is the major focus of Lancer. You've got so much rules dedicated to that, and the mechs are the cool stuff. I wanted to explore more of how to make the narrative system click in an interesting way. So yeah, I really wanted to do that, like set up the scenarios and set up, this is what's going down, this is what is happening, these are the places you're in, what do you do? Just kind of taking some of that philosophy from some D&D advice. Usually, like, I think I listen to a lot of Matt Colville, and one of his things is like, do not prep plots, or maybe I'm confusing that with Alexandrian. But yeah, but like that's one of the things. Like you want to prep you don't prepare a story, you prepare a scenario or a location, and then the players interact with that and they create the story.
Yeah.
And that's always like the rough part too, because you want to, like, especially with like a one shot, like or a short shot like this, like you do have to like constrain things, because you do want to like have them eventually like go through and use the content that you prepared for the GM, but it's all about trying to maintain that player agency along the way.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's lots of room to fail a little bit, right? So it's like, they don't have to get everything done. It's just whatever they get done within the time frame that they have. Then we go to the big mech fight. Like,
yeah,
but it's still their story to tell, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. I'm down with that. I'm down with all of that. So.
Something I'm kind of curious about, because you did mention playtesting. I was wondering how you found, like, if you did multiple playtests and how you found they ended up feeling different from each other with different groups, or just how people interacted with the game itself.
Yeah, so I ran one playtest myself, and another GM on PilotNet ran a playtest, and provided me with some feedback that I recently incorporated in a recent update. Yeah, when I was running through the first playtest, it was I think the consistent thing was that I needed to add a little bit more characterization, a little bit more ties for the players to have to the community itself. That honestly led to the series of leading questions in Beat 1, where basically it goes over the players' histories with the settlement. Basically, you're all workers. What does your, in Lancer you pick a background usually. How does that background contribute to the settlement? How have you helped people? How have other people helped you? That sort of thing. Then we go down the line of like, all right, here's the major NPCs. This is the despot. You've got Chevalier Korolyova, aka Kestrel. That's her call sign. How has she tried to raise her myth of how good she is? And how is her negligence of the settlement made your life worse? Here's her first in command, this dig site boss. He's a bully. He's a jerk. How has he harmed you or people that you care about? Here's the revolutionaries. This is the person that tries to recruit you for their strike. How did they try to recruit you? Why did they try to recruit you? And what history do you have with them that would lead them to do that? The last two questions have to do with the helpers, Dr. Dmitry Nakai. He is the one of the doctors, because a player could obviously be a doctor as well. That actually came up in a playtest. But yeah, he's a doctor. How has he helped you? How has he helped you or a loved one recover from an injury, even miraculously. And the last question is like, all right, turns out the doctor has a mission for you. He has a plan. Just bring everybody out. So yeah, it's like that all wasn't there in like the first draft when I was playtesting.
Mm-hmm.
So adding those, I feel, will help anchor the players a little bit more. I was told by the GM who did the other playtest that that's what they were really looking for. And once those existed and they posed those questions to their players, they felt a lot more grounded. So I was really glad for that.
Those are, I mean, I think they're great because like it's obviously like a one shot. It's kind of like a jarring experience to be like, now I'm just in this character's skin for like it's only a short period of time, while like they obviously had a past and they're in the middle of something. So let's just generate some questions, and so you can have a framework to reference when you're moving forward, right? Because yeah, for sure. I think that's brilliant. I think those questions, I think you should always question your players, like, why, what is your character bringing to the story? Like, what is their background? What are they trying to run from? Or if they're trying to run from anything, you know what I mean? Like, just so there's context that you as a GM can build off of and they can go off of. Because, my philosophy is that, like, the very first session about any game you're running is always the worst session. It's always like, everybody's a little awkward. Everybody's like, okay, I got to figure out, what's my parasocial dynamic to these fake characters, right? Like, who's gonna fit out the party, like, that kind of stuff. So, I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah, I would say that if this was to be used as part of like a longer campaign instead of just a one shot, definitely take all of those questions out of beat 1 and put them in your pitch. If you're a GM, just put them in your pitch. So therefore players can like answer them in like, whether it's like on their own or even in like a Discord or like a shared chat. So people can figure out everything ahead of time and maybe save some time. But the reason why I included it in beat 1 here was that, all right, this can help set the scene, especially for the kind of collaborativeness of Lancer's narrative play. Like, all right, let's set the scene by including the players and getting their, it's kind of like an icebreaker in my eyes. And yeah, that's kind of my hope, is that like it helps people get the creative juices flowing and has everything fresh in their minds once narrative play begins in earnest.
Yeah, I think it also, like as I was reading it, I was thinking it would also help people feel more personally invested in the setting and the space and like the characters within it, so that like there's more inherent care about like the conclusion of it, especially like for a one shot. Like you want to get people invested in it pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. That was I think the major thing that I struggled with in my early drafts is like, all right, how do I hook the players while maintaining their agency? And yeah, I think that those questions do a decent job of that.
Definitely. So something I did really want to talk about is sort of like the something I did want to talk about is like the inspiration and like the themes for Pierce the Heavens, because obviously Gurren Lagann is a pretty big inspiration here. I kind of came to Gurren Lagann pretty recently, but it was very exciting, and I don't know, I guess I just wanted to talk about that a bit, like how much of that came into your story here, and like what other inspirations were you pulling on when you were writing it?
Yeah, so one of the initial portions of the writing workshop that I was in went through how do you generate a bunch of ideas, how to brainstorm. So like here I am on the train. I was making a visit to a friend, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna come with some ideas. One of them was Gurren Lagann, and I'm like, hey, let's call it Pierce the Heavens, and like all right, well, it's checking all the Lancer boxes. Like, here's a bunch of people. They're trapped underground. Kind of mirrors with the Ungratefuls in Lancer's lore. They're oppressed, and they're trying to reach the surface and be free of that oppression. So like a lot of the ideas just kind of lined up with how Lancer views its subject matter. And I just felt like, all right, this idea in particular is resonating with me. Let's see what I can do. Let's see where we can go with this. And we just kind of built from there. Definitely a lot of inspirations came from it. A lot of the characters were inspired from characters of the anime from the pilot episode. Yeah, like if it wasn't apparent from the quote, Asuka Haganova, the revolutionary, like very much inspired by Kamina from Gurren Lagann, like very like who the hell do you think I am sort of person, like very cocky but also charismatic and gets people to rally around her. The Alexei Grosso was inspired by the foreman or whoever the chief of from the pilot.
Yeah.
Who he has a sword. He's self-important. I think I played up his villainy in this adventure more. But yeah, those are the two big ones, and then it's just yeah, I drew a lot of inspiration for just like the titles and stuff. So yeah, it was very much taking the idea of the setting and the underlying ideas of the pilot episode and converting it into a Lancerified adventure, if that makes sense. Not quite as over the top as Gurren Lagann itself, and you know what? I'm okay with that, because Lancer is at its core mud and lasers, boots in the mud, more down to earth. I'm okay with that. I hope that there's still chances for people to quote unquote go beyond. But yeah, it was yeah, like the idea is like, okay, well, there's gonna be a big hole that opens up in the ceiling eventually, and then some bigger, badder thing is gonna come down, and you got to fight that. Yeah, that was definitely an idea pulled from the pilot as well. Yeah, there's just like a lot of things.
It's cool. I think that like the first episode of I'm a big Gurren Lagann fan. Like I watch it pretty much like every couple of months. But because you got to get that drip in your veins, right? But yeah, I just like that it's the most grounded episode of Gurren Lagann, period, right? So it's like a really nice starting point for Lancer, like the Lancer game. I like, honestly, like I really feel like it encapsulates like a whole bunch of stuff, like that is like the idea of like a starting adventure where the stakes are small but like important, right? It's like it's not even like the whole planet is concerned. It's like this one colony like on this place, right? Just the people that you care about right here, right now. You gotta do something about it. And then at the end of the adventure, it's like then you get to introduce like Union and like all these bigger players, and then like you go to space, like all shows should go to space, right? So yeah, like it's good. No, I even though it's toned down, you can still feel fight the power vibe in it, where it's just like you're just a couple of dudes fighting against the establishment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also try to incorporate a little bit of like some references and some of the rewards. Like I award there's a couple pieces of exotic gear that the players can get by basically beating the mini bosses or bosses. Like one of them is just basically, all right, you get a nanocarbon sword like from the Blackbeard license, but you get it as a piece of exotic gear using the exotic gear rules from Wallflower. And it's just like, all right, well, you just get this sword and you can use it. And that was kind of like in reference to how Kamina takes the chief's sword. So you get that from from Grosso if you beat him up properly. And then like if you manage to defeat the final boss, you can get a piece of gear from them. That's to be honest, it's just like it's a slightly tuned up version of what already exists in core, but I wanted to make it a little bit special. And I'm like, all right, well here you go. Like take this system. It's a little bit more special. I don't know if I want to like talk too much about it without spoiling it, but it's probably apparent what it's going to be. But whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, that was one thing I was worried about because I really wanted to talk about like the last combat in the module because I thought it had a very interesting concept, a very interesting setting to it. But I didn't want to take that away from people who might be playing this in the future.
Go for it. Honestly, like you're already here. You might as well.
Okay, I just like that it was sideways. I like that.
Oh yeah.
That you had to because basically everything has magic clamps or is flying or whatever, but like there's still gravity to contend with. So as you're fighting your way up this mine shaft and enemies are coming in from the sides, if something is rammed or broken off, or like a wreck is smashed or whatever, like it can start falling towards the player ingress area. And I just thought that was a really interesting idea. Like the map, of course, like it looks flat and everything, but you're still fighting your way up a wall and things might still fall towards you.
Yeah. If I was a more skilled map maker, I would have tried to make it more apparent. But I tried to make like the top of the map be lighter, like it's like, oh, it's a surface, and the bottom a little bit darker. And yeah, it was just it was just an idea that got stuck in my head. And like, you know what, I like this idea, this weird thing of like, all right, there's a bunch of rocks around, but stuff can fall. You're literally ascending from the pits up to the sky, back to the surface. That was honestly what I wanted to incorporate. Like that idea of like moving upwards was something I tried to incorporate when I was making the maps. It's both the maps. You start at the bottom and you work your way up. And that was just a conscious choice. I'm like, all right, we are going up. We are both like figuratively on this map and like literally in the narrative. So yeah, I had a little bit of fun with that idea. My original idea was like, what if it was some wacky cylinder where if you went off the left-hand side, you wound up on the right-hand side.
Ooh.
Because it was, oh, you're fighting on a cylinder, so you circled around. And then I realized that's way too hard. that's way too much mental load. I'm like, I don't even want to write that. GM is going to have a heck of a time trying to understand that. People are already having a heck of a time trying to understand what I was doing with this happening on a wall when I was running it past people on PilotNet. So it's like, all right, we're going to keep this simple. It's basically just big old flat. There's enough space for things to fly above it, the usual amount. But otherwise, you're going up. You got gravity to contend with, and you're going up.
I mean, I think that would have been a fun map idea. But
it would have been wild, and it was way out of scope.
Entirely fair. But yeah, that it sort of plays into one of the things that I really like about Lancer, how they give you the suggestions of the different kinds of combats that aren't just make the enemy number equal 0. Like there's other goals and things you can achieve. There's other directions that enemies can come in from and things they'll try to do, and other win and loss conditions basically. And I just like that this plays on that and adds the extra elements of gravity being in a different direction. I like unique map ideas like that. I don't know, that was just something I really enjoyed from this section.
Thank you. Yeah, that is one of my favorite parts of Lancer, is that here it gives you ideas in core for how to run combats that aren't just death matches. It focuses on that objective-based gameplay. That's something that I love from back when I played a lot more competitive first-person shooters. Like, I loved the objective-based gameplay because I wasn't always the best shooter, wasn't always the best, didn't have the best KDA all the time. But when I'm working with a team, figuring out, all right, how do we capture this flag? How do we take these territories? That just gets my brain going, and it's just like, this is great. So that's one of the parts that I love about Lancer, and one of the parts that I really wanted to emphasize. And you might even notice that with some of the with some of the enemy choices I picked, like on the map where you are going up the wall, like the only striker or damaging foe is really like the boss. The other ones, like, they might have a little bit of damage, but for the most part, they don't do a lot of damage. They just exist to slow you down. They exist to bog down your escape. They don't necessarily want to kill you, because they want you. They want you working in the mines.
Yeah.
So it's like they want to stop the transport. So I just picked things around. How do we gunk up the works? How do we prevent the escort from getting to the other end? So we put in a barricade that can put down some walls that can also ram and cause to fall.
Yeah.
We put in a support that can heal some people, but also create sticky fields that people can't move through very easily. And we got sentinels that punish people for moving with some shooting, but they're also relatively close range. So yeah, that was something that I very, very much wanted to focus upon. Like, we've got an objective to play here, so let's pick things to that objective. I do know that from one of the play tests, it was a little over-tuned for 3 players. I tuned it back down once in the most recent release. But yeah, hopefully it's a little bit more manageable for players. I know that my group did a good job. It was 4 players. Basically, they were just heading up the wall. They just annihilated the supports. It was funny. It was funny. They just did, like, the one Everest had a cyclone pulse rifle and literally just one-shot the supports with their cyclone pulse rifle.
That's like a lot of. I mean, supports have a lot of HP, so I'm actually pretty impressed. It's been a good roll.
They crit both times and just annihilated them. It was just
nice.
like I think they have like 15 HP at tier 1, so they just the supports just evaporated. And then later on, like round 6 or something, like the ace boss that was flying in the air and was like out of range of like melee attacks and stuff. They had been maintaining their HP for the most part. They've been using support / drones to like, oh yeah, I'm gonna fly through this, get my HP back up. They had to stabilize off some heat because of constant invades and tech attacks. But eventually, one of the players just fired their heavy machine gun, literally shot them, took them from 100 to 0. And this is like a multi-structure foe. And they just 100 to 0 them because they shot them. Technically, the rules was that, all right, even if you fall towards the wall. So it's like, all right, narratively, they get like a grapple cable and they try to pull themselves through the wall, but they still take an impact because it's pulling them too fast.
Yeah.
That damage, the fall damage, then structured them again, and then they basically died from there. Like they got hit, they got structured, their flight system blew up because it was the only system they had. So they fell to the ground. Then their weapon, when they hit the ground, their weapon blew up. So now they're effectively, all they can do is like maybe walk around on the ground and maybe improvise attack at best, because their weapon is gone, their flight system is gone. It's like, uh-oh. And then the second shot just finished them off, left them a burning wreck. So there we go.
Nice.
It was like this boss was just haranguing them for most of the fight, and then in one round they just ate it. They finally found the weak point and just 100 to 0, and it was just like, that's funny and satisfying. It's great.
I think that's like Curse of Aces. It's like it's always chill for like most of the fight, and then just one good shot and this thing just like dies. Yep. It's just like, I give up. Like
yeah, I mean, yeah, you land one good shot when it doesn't have a barrel roll to make your attack miss, and it's just like, oh well, I guess I'm dead.
Just need that one. This is something that's always like I can never figure out when it comes to like, I mean, like something I'd be interested in playtesting, because I always struggle with like the idea of balancing combat, especially in a D20 based game, because you can have so many different results that something that's balanced for one group might not work out for, especially with Lancer as well, because all the players are so modular.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a rough spot. There is a fairly good community accepted formula that I stuck to when I was making my encounters. I got some good help from people on the PilotNet server. Shout out to Clem Cuddlecakes for some of his help, and for making the maps and the team comps. But yeah, there's a fairly well-defined formula. It's like, all right, you want to keep it around total structure should be around like 1.5 to 2 times the number of players you got. Total number of enemy turns should be about 1.5 the players at any given time. So it's like one of these is like, how many bodies do you have prepared for this fight? And the other one is the activations is how many bodies can you have on the field at the time? And then you trickle in from the reserves to try to maintain that ratio, that 1.5 activations, that 1.5 turns. So like I had some of that going on, but there's obviously like, all right, well, this is my first Lancer adventure I've written. So like I was relying a lot on just help from the community and the community's wisdom to try to make sure like, all right, let's make this not too overbearing. Let's make sure that this is playable. I do think that in general, players will surprise you.
Oh yeah.
I usually like that sort of philosophy that I mentioned before in the narrative section of just let the players do it, they'll figure something out. I kind of apply that to the combats as well, and like you see some of that in D&D even especially at high levels where they got so many options. Like players will figure something out. Like I feel like with Lancer, especially with everybody's abilities and everything, I feel like I could put something reasonable on there on the field. Maybe it might be a little overtuned, but at the end of the day, the players will make it. And if they don't, well, I accounted for that. There's victory and defeat outcomes. That's like that is part of the expectation of Lancer, that you could win or you could lose. And if you lose, we should account for that. So I accounted for it in this adventure. Best I could. Try to in a way that lets them keep going. Granted, like yeah, like I think with like the defeat in the first combat, players can usually keep on going, but they take like a little bit of extra damage. Like one of their things gets destroyed, one of their systems or weapons gets destroyed. As like all right, well, you didn't succeed, so you're going to keep on fighting as this is going on, and you're going to take a little bit of extra damage. Like that was awkward for me to write, because I'm like, I want there to be consequences, but I also want the show to go on. I don't want to make things come to a stop. That was something that I kind of realized too when I look at like D&D adventures and D&D modules. D&D modules usually don't have a loss condition. Usually, or at least they don't detail a loss condition. Like what happens when and if the players get beat up. And that was just something that I realized, like, these modules didn't really like explain what would happen if you weren't successful. So with Lancer, it's kind of like untrodden ground for me, because so much of my experience comes from reading a lot of D&D modules that I'm familiar with, and so it was just like kind of like, how do I make this defeat interesting, have consequences, but also let the story continue?
Yeah, that failing forward thing, where it's like, you don't want the story to end here because that's not fun. We still want to have the fun, right? So let's like you can fail at this fight, get a little beat up some more, but we'll keep it going, kind of deal.
Absolutely.
Totally. Yeah. My go-to thing is have an NPC show up and then die heroically to save them. So especially
classic.
Specifically the one they like the best, just so they remember to not fuck up. Like,
rude but an important lesson.
Yeah, that was. I think that was in an earlier draft of like someone else. Like they had to get out and try to arm this drill that's gonna blow the hole in the ceiling. And if they weren't careful, they could get knocked out. And if none of the players volunteered, then one of the NPCs would. And if the NPC would do it, they would definitely die, or something like that. Yeah. But I kind of changed that and dialed it back. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. We're gonna just let it ride. Especially since like initially I was struggling with getting players to really bond with the NPCs. So
Yeah.
so it was just like, let's just make this a little bit softer. I do get a little bit more for the final fight. I'm like, all right, well, I don't really have any plans for anything beyond this module. Like this is the end of the module. So I'm going to let victory and defeat be two very divergent things. Victory is like, spoiler alert, like victory, you get out, you escape, you're going to make contacts with other people. Depending on the initial hook, maybe if you were originally born in Kestrel's Bounty, the settlement, maybe you lead these people to a bright new future. You link up with other ungrateful cells and make a new life for yourselves. But if you fail, but the world keeps going on. You still blew a hole in the ceiling. There's still a hole in the ceiling. Like no amount of battle losses is going to change the fact that there is now sun shining on this settlement for the first time ever, and everybody in the system is now, wait, what just happened? What's going on? Drawing a lot of eyes. So like, yeah, your players written in, like, yeah, your characters might get I wrote it that characters might get captured. I know that the GM who did the playtesting, instead they had them fall back tactically back into the settlement and plan their next move. That might continue later. I wanted something that was a little bit more. I think that's a completely valid way to take the narrative to make sure the player agency is maintained. I liked the idea of like the captured though, just because like, all right, well, it'll bookend it. It'll be like, all right, well, you're captured, but now this will be a completely different direction. Whereas like the original was like, all right, well, maybe you're going to start making a new settlement, start up a campaign. This instead, if you're captured, it becomes more of like kind of like a political game in a way, because now there's parties that are angling for your escape and are trying to get this despot in hot water. I would imagine that a campaign using this could go in wildly different directions depending on the final result.
Like even if you fail, like the solid state of the world has been shifted irreparably, right? Like no matter what, that hole's not going to go away, right? So maybe the player's story on Kestrel ends there, even though they failed, and maybe they get booted somewhere else, or a bigger political story, power comes in. And it's like, well, we should probably change things as Union tries to do, right? So I think both scenarios are good because they bring the wider world in to Kestrel, and Kestrel Bounty becomes like a significant place that something important happened, right? So,
yeah, and it's like no longer are the players just commoners in the settlement. They are now part of a larger world, a larger universe outside of where they were, and I think that's I think is an important thing with Lancers. Like, yes, you're focused on these boots on the ground, these personal stories, but at the end of the day, it's part of bringing about a larger change in the universe's state, and I think that's something that is good to explore in Lancer games.
Yeah, definitely a theme of Lancer and definitely a theme of Gurren Lagann. So this is floored. I was like, wow, this is so good. This is what I want.
Thank you.
For sure.
So what sort of like response have you had to the module after publishing it? Like, I know you mentioned like how you've changed things after play tests. Like, what other sort of commentary have you gotten on it that might like change if you plan to do like another module or like a longer something like that in the future, or a longer another module or a longer adventure maybe in the future, is what I was trying to say. Like, what sort of commentary have you got on that might impact how you approach that?
I haven't had a lot of feedback for the final release at this point in time. I know that some people are still I know that some people are still planning on running it in the near future, and I hope to hear back from them soon. I assume that some people I did get some recent feedback that basically this person was running the game, and it was looking like there was going to be a player death in like the first hour, mostly because the player was being a gremlin with by strapping an explosive to a forklift and dropping a brick on the pedal. So it's like. So like when they initially said it, it looked like there's going to be a player death in the first hour. I'm like, oh no, have I made this module too deadly? And when I asked for clarification, like, oh no, this is definitely the player's choice. Like, oh, thank God.
Players will make it deadly.
Like, it's okay if the players decide to do this. It's okay if the players throw themselves into a dangerous situation. It's another thing. It feels bad if, like, I set up the GM or the players to fail. That is something that I was always afraid of when I was writing it, because I'm like, I don't want to enable a GM to make things unfun for the players. I want to enable them to make the game more runnable. I want to make sure the players have a good time. I want to make sure the players' agency is maintained. That was good to see that people were having fun with that. Most of my feedback came from like the earlier play tests. One of the things that I think that is important, especially for like LL0 sort like beginner modules, is taking time to note that, hey, maybe you should let the players know what some of these NPCs can do. There was, in the playtest I ran, I could have stood to signal better that the Demolisher NPC is very, very dangerous in melee, and you should not get next to it in melee. I didn't quite signal that well, and one of the players rushed up in melee, and it was rough for them. They were
got the hammer.
they were hit by the hammer a lot, and I didn't do a great job of like giving them an out. And part of that is like pilot error from me as a GM. Part of it's like I should also include detail, like, hey, GMs, if your players are new, signal, give them a signal. Don't let them go in blind. Let them go in completely blind, and let them know that they can scan for more information if they want to know more about these things. But at least give them like a hook to say, this is potentially dangerous, or this is maybe something that this creature or NPC can do. And if you want to learn more, just hit that scan button. That sort of thing.
Sure. I mean, it's been a while since I ran a game for people who are new to Lancer, like straight out of like, they have no experience with it, right? But because now all of our players are like, oh yeah, that's a Demolisher, I know what I'm doing, right? Because we've been through the ropes and all this stuff. But definitely like trying to encourage the players to be like, this guy is good at this, but I'm not going to tell you exactly what he's good at, but just be careful, right?
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, that is something that I hope to carry forward in other things that I write, like just give warnings or other ways to signal, like, hey, here's a little bit of GM advice to make sure that the players aren't completely blindsided. Give them some sort of signaling. That's always the most important thing as like a GM. Like you are the in games with a GM, with a dedicated GM, you are the font of information. You often are the referee that controls the tone and the flow of information in the world. So you've got to make sure that the players have the information they need to make educated choices. And that's always the hard part. Is like, you give them too much, you give them too little. It's a balancing act, and usually the best thing to do is err on the side of giving them too much, because, well, not to the point of overloading them, but like give them enough information to make educated decisions.
Sure.
So it doesn't hurt to give more hints.
I do like every time you describe an area, it's always like the lighting, what machinery is around there, just like things that will describe the scene but also have impact on their decisions, right? It's like if a place is kind of darker, then maybe you can sneak a little bit better, that kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
Where it's like gives them ideas of like how to pull off this this espionage revolt, essentially, right?
Yeah. I admit that a lot of that sort of thing, that idea, these kind of aspects of a space, the features of the area, that's a D&Dism a lot of times, just to like, give people to work with. But being able to use those aspects in a way that could help you or hinder you, that was something I actually pulled from Fate, where like, oh, there's aspects of a scenario, and you can invoke those aspects to get a bonus on your roll, that sort of thing. That was something that I wanted to like. I liked that mechanic, so I tried to codify that in the adventure. That's something I hope to also have in like some future stuff. Like, all right, it's just like it adds that extra bit of depth to the narrative system of Lancer, and allows for a little more play with the area, and saying like, hey, GM, it's okay to let players say, I'm going to use the forklift to do this.
just as long as they're okay with the consequences of death, you know what I mean? Like...
Oh yeah.
So you did also up top, you did mention that you had worked on the development of CompCon.
Yes.
I was actually super curious about that because I was not aware of that fact.
Yeah, I am a software developer by day. So I've done a lot of coding work in my main career. And like, yeah, when I originally got to Lancer, I'm like, all right, I want to make sure that the tools available to players and GMs especially I want to make sure that they're equipped with what they need to make the game more accessible, and make it easier for someone to get into the game. Doing those sorts of bug fixes, doing bug fixes for CompCon, helping people out. I spent a lot of time like monitoring the CompCon channels and discussions and stuff, just to make sure that people who are asking for help can get it. It's all part of a larger kind of thrust to make the game more accessible. Through working on CompCon and fixing bugs, I can make it more accessible to players who use CompCon for important stuff. By writing an adventure, I can give GMs a tool that they might need in order to get into the game. Because as a GM myself, I never like writing stuff on my own. I never like when I'm running a campaign, I always run published stuff because I don't have time to do other stuff.
Right.
So of course, naturally, I wind up writing something on my own anyway. But hey, at least now I'm not like constrained by game time. I'm now doing something else. So like it's kind of different in a way. It's the context is different, and
yeah.
But I'm like, I want to see more of these modules out there. So what do? I write a module myself, and even before that, I'm like, I want to help people be able to write modules in a way that looks good and professional. So I write the Lancer RPG template. I'm like, here, take this. Took a lot of inspiration from a simple D&D 5e template by Laura Heersbrunner. I think I got the name right. I took a lot of inspiration from that, and learned a lot about Microsoft Word along the way.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, I just very much, I think, I don't know what it is about Lancer. It hooked me somehow. It's hooked me with like the art, the style, the mecha. I'm like, this is something that I have not really played or experienced a lot of in the TTRPG space, but I love it. I love the style. I love the ideas, and I want it to grow. I want more people to be able to enjoy it. I want myself to be able to enjoy it more too, and that's why I want to make so many. That's why I'm making the tools. That's why I'm trying to make the content, and that's why I want to encourage more people to make their content and put it out there. I know there's so much Lancer homebrew out there, but it's all in Google Docs a lot of times, or it's all on like personal computers, and people are just kind of they'll share it on PilotNet, and they'll keep track of it, but like that stuff's not necessarily discoverable, and people have so much good stuff that they've written up. They've put so much stuff together, and I want to see people be confident in their own work to share it with a larger populace and help grow the hobby and help grow this community, because I think that this Lancer's got so much good stuff going for it. It feels like a very modern game, especially in terms of its perspectives, and I just want to I want to keep going. I want the hobby to grow. So
yeah, I really like this I like the community. Like every time I hear a story about the community, like it's always about people being like helpful with each other, trying to figure out how to make certain things work and stuff like that. I mean, you know, there's every community has its own thing, but I don't hear as much negative stories about the Lancer community as there may be in other, you know, game areas. And I think that's partially because it's a niche thing, and also partially because there's so many people who are always like working on something new in Lancer, and they want to share it with people, and they want to get ideas and feedback, and that whole loop that's created there. I think it's a very positive experience.
I think that it's like every time we interview somebody or hear about another homebrew, it's always like it's always so good, but also like so diverse. I think that's one of the coolest parts about like the Lancer homebrew community, and like the Lancer community in general, is just like the amount of stories that are being told and the variety of them and the perspectives. It's like crazy. Like it's mind-boggling to me, like the amount of stuff, like amount of hard stuff that people pick up and is like, okay, we can explore these areas, and then the amount of like fun, goofy, over-the-top shit people are also putting at the same time. It's just like it's like all the things that I love at once, and it's great.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I just want to see more of that out there. I want to see that, like itch.io, I want to see Drive-Thru RPG, I want to see those overflow with just like Lancer stuff, like Lancer titles, like, look, this is what you can do with this system. These are the stories you can tell. These are what people have made. These are the things that you can use in your own games. It's powerful to see that sort of stuff come up, and I just want to see more of it.
Yeah, and hopefully that gets more people interested in like running it when they see different kinds of adventures they can do and different kind of tools they can use.
Absolutely. If you build it, they will come.
Exactly.
Nice.
All right. Is there anything else you want to say about Pierce the Heavens or other Lancer work that you're planning on doing that you've done before we head on to the outro?
I think that we've covered a lot of Pierce the Heavens. I do want to mention that right now I'm in the process of making my next adventure. Its working title is Technophobia. It basically the idea is like, all right, you're on a ship. It is haunted by an NHP or an AI that is basically, it's like a ghost ship in a way, and something has angered the AI, and now it's your problem. So yeah, I'm working on that because Spooky Month is coming up, and I'd like to. I don't know if it's going to be out by the end of Spooky Month, but it's a goal I have. I do have some shout outs. When should I do that?
Well, we can go right into those now. Sure, actually,
if that's okay. Like, it's okay. I don't have to. Like, if you don't want me to shout out anything, then I won't shout out anything.
Oh no, I totally do. We usually do these shout outs during the outro, which is kind of what we're going into. So now is
let's
the perfect
just do it
time.
now. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well then, I wanted to give a shout out to NHP Shaka of a Ukua station. His enthusiasm, honestly, is what really got me going when I initially shared it on PilotNet. Like, his enthusiasm was just like infectious. I'm like, okay, cool. Shaka is excited about this. He's written third-party works. He's writing a first-party work now for Massive Press. Like, that's exciting. That's great. So, and he's been great to talk to too about just like GMing and adventure writing stuff too. Just recently. I wanted to shout out Storytelling Collective's RPG Writer Workshop for giving me so much information and guidance for putting together this adventure. Honestly, check it out if you're interested in writing your own adventures. They do it twice a year. I think the one's coming in November. But yeah, it's good. It's helpful. It gives you so much. It just gives you a process to get going, and that's really helpful. I wanted to shout out Storm Talus from PilotNet for initial feedback that really helped me put the adventure going, get the adventure draft going. Orange for running that playtest game that gave me so much information. Laurie O'Connell for Sleeping Above a Stolen Crown, because that was a good reference for how to write a different adventure in Lancer. And Massive Press, obviously, for their use of Lancer. Great game. Thank you for making this. It's been a joy to interact with the community that this game has made. So that's my shout outs. Thank you.
Awesome. And we also have our own list of shout outs, which also includes Shaka, who is always a joy to talk to and is a great ambassador for the Lancer community. As well, over on the Akua Station channel, the Plymouth Rock series, Lancer actual play series started recently. We've got links below to the trailer and to the first episode if you guys want to check out more Lancer plays. Also, as always, I do want to give a shout out to the Untold Stories project channel, where I'm personally at on Mondays and Tuesdays in their different shows. They have superhero shows going on. One is, they're superhero shows, but they have very unique themes. One is more of a space Guardians of the Galaxy kind of adventure. The other is more of a Fantasyland magical girls adventure. Both are very different and very fun. Definitely go check those out. The magical girls just got their powers for the first time and had their first big combat, so that was a whole lot of fun and very exciting. Also, on the stuff going on our channel, as was mentioned, Spooky Month is coming up. So as far as the regular gaming streams go, the Sunday time slot's going to be for some horror games. It's looking like Dead Space right now. So if you're interested in that, definitely check us out on Sundays.
Let's go in spooky. It's going to be a fright. I don't know. You should dress up. I'm going to tell you to dress up. It's pretty good.
I'll see if I can dig up a costume of some type.
Just wear
I have
a hat.
a cape somewhere.
Have a cape. Nice.
Everybody needs a spare cape. That's what we've got going on the channel. Of course, if you want any more updates and stuff, check us out on Twitter at Win With Dice, where we post regular updates about everything that's going on. But I think that's going to be it for this episode. Valk, thanks for coming and hanging out and sharing your stories with us and putting out this adventure. I really enjoy it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I hope that the adventure is enjoyable. Let me know your feedback. I look forward to hearing some of your stories.
All right. And definitely, if you guys check it out and play it, make sure to leave a comment about how it went, because those comments are always helpful. I think that's something every creator would say.
Oh, absolutely.
But that's going to be it for now. So for all the players and GMs out there, just remember to keep on winning with dice, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.